Buongiorno tutti. I'm Chef John Giovanni. Probably some of you might know me from my blog, Bon Cibo, Authentic Italian Cuisine. I have kind of recently decided to change things up a bit and make my focus the La Cucina Povera, or the poor kitchen. And the reason that I've decided to do that is because I'm sure, like you, every time I go to the grocery store and I come back, I am absolutely flabbergasted and shocked at the prices of things. And I find myself spending less and less and buying fewer and fewer things and trying to find things that are less expensive and still be able to create, a delicious meal that's somewhat healthy and nutritious. So one of the things that I've done, and I normally do this every year anyway, but I usually try to put a garden in during the summer. Last summer, unfortunately, the weather wasn't very good, and I did not get uh, hardly anything out of my garden at all. But this year, it's sort of exploded to the point that I have all of, like, these are cucumbers, and this is like I don't know, probably 10th time that I've harvested cucumbers. I've been pickling them. I've been doing serving. I told someone the other day I'm going to turn into a cucumber. These are zucchini from my garden, and I mean, this bad boy is massive. I mean, look at that. It's like bigger than my forearm. So again, I've been pickling the zucchini. I've been trying to be creative about ways to use it because I don't want any of it to go to waste. So what I've decided I'm going to do today is I'm going to use this super huge zucchini here to make a zucchini and potato au gratin. So I have all these bits and pieces of cheese that, and by the way, every time I go to the market, I check the cheese that's on sale. I try to buy anything that's like less than $3. And so I have all these little pieces of cheese left over, and I'm going to use these cheese. I'm going to put them in the food processor, grind them up, and use them to make my au gratin. So what I'm going to do is start off by grinding this cheese up. And then I'm going to peel and slice these potatoes, and I'm going to slice this gigantic zucchini nice and thin. And then I'm going to be layering this into a baking dish, and I have herbs out on my deck growing in pots. I'm going to use thyme and oregano, salt, pepper, the cheese, some half and half cream, and layer this dish. And then I'm going to put it in the refrigerator until later this evening, right before, it's going to take about an hour to bake, about an hour and a half before I want to have dinner. I'm going to put it in the oven and bake it for an hour, and then I'm going to let it rest for a half an hour before I serve it. So I'm going to get started on slicing up these zucchini and potatoes, and once I get that done, we'll be right back and start the layering. Okay, so I have peeled and sliced the potatoes and tried to get them as thin as I can. And I actually use a, what do you call this thing, to cut them with. Same thing with the zucchini. You can see that they're pretty thin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this baking dish and I'm going to add just a little bit of olive oil to the bottom of it. And I'm going to use a brush to sort of brush it around. And this is going to help to prevent this from sticking. So I'm just going to take this brush and brush it around. Make sure I get the sides and the bottom coated. And then I'm going to start layering the vegetables and potatoes, the zucchini and the potatoes. So I'm going to start with a thin layer of the zucchini, and then I'm going to be adding little sprinkles of salt, but not too much, because I also have the cheese that I'm going to be putting in here. So these are all those bits of cheese that I use the food processor to grind up. So I just cut them into about maybe half-inch squares, threw them all in the food processor, and put it on, let it run for about a minute or two. And That's perfection. So anyway, and a little pepper. And I'm going to continue to do this with each layer. Now, this is thyme that I brought in from my garden. And I'm just going to start pulling leaves off of it and dropping it in there. And the thyme has flowers on it as well. And a lot of people take the flowers off and throw them away, but I actually really like the flavor of the flowers almost more than I like the flavor of the leaf. So I use them, and I often put them in salads. I mean, I think they make a fantastic addition to a salad. And again, it's like, you just don't want to waste things. Things are too valuable these days to be wasting them. In fact, I just returned from Italy about a month ago, where I attended a culinary session there on Tuscan cuisine, and they were using the peelings of the vegetables, potatoes and specifically, that he was using them. He ended up shredding them up and then made fritters out of them and fried them. And they had other like carrot peelings and zucchini peelings, other types of peelings in them as well. And he used those to make these little fried fritters with, and they were actually really delicious. So, I mean, again, this is an example of, don't waste things when you can be creative and use them for something. So I'm just going to keep layering this like this. And then when I get it all done, again, I'm going to doing layers of the zucchini, layers of the potatoes, layers of the 4 or 5 cheeses I took from the refrigerator, the thyme, a little salt and pepper in between each of these layers. And then I'm going to be covering it with cream, or in my case, I'm going to use half and half. And then I'm going to top it with a layer of Parmesan, and then it's going to be ready to bake. Okay, so here I have about a cup of milk. And I did want to mention to you, I did not mention it earlier, as I'm making these layers, I'm pushing down on them because I want this to be as compact as possible. So the zucchini is quite watery, and I'm going to want some of the water to cook out of it. So the more I can compress it, the denser the dish will be. This is some half and half. It's about 3/4 of a cup. And in this, I grated some nutmeg, and I put some of the herbs in this. And I'm just going to take this and pour it over these layers, letting it do it rather slowly, otherwise it's going to go all over the place. And then it's going to soak through these layers and end up sort of binding with that cheese that I put in those layers, and it's going to make this really nice and cheesy and rich and delicious. So now what I'm going to do is grate up. So I have some Asiago cheese. I'm going to be grating that up on a box grater, and I'm going to sprinkle that over the top of this, and then I'm just going to wrap it up, and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator, and I'm going to let it sit there and rest for the next couple of hours until about an hour and a half or so before dinner. And then I'm going to put it in the oven at 350 degrees. I'm going to let it bake for an hour. For the first hour, I'm going to cover it with foil, but I'm going to tint it because I don't want it to over brown. That's why I'm covering it. But I'm going to sort of tint it because I do want some of the steam or liquid to escape from it, so that it won't end up being watery when it's completed. And then for about a half an hour after, I'm going to take the cover off of it and let it just brown up on top. So I'm going to get this ready for the oven and be back shortly. So this is the Asiago cheese that I bought, and you can see that it says price reduced. And it was $2.08 for this block of cheese, which originally was around $8, which I do not understand why, but at any rate, they have a box section in the grocery store that I frequent, where they have cheese that's on sale, and I'm always rooting through that. And I found this, and I thought it was a great deal, and it's going to work perfectly for this. This is the box grater that I'm going to be using to grate it up. I'm going to be using the medium-sized holes to do the grating, because I want it to be sort of shredded. So once I get this shredded up, I'm just going to sprinkle it on top of my dish. And you can see this is the way it's looking right now. I don't want to tip it too much. I don't want all that cream to come out of there. And then, like I said, I'm going to tent it with foil, put it in the refrigerator, let it rest there for a couple of hours, hour and a half, 2 hours before I'm wanting to have dinner. It's going to go in the oven for an hour covered. Uncover it for the last half hour to let it brown up on top. And then I'll let it rest while I'm preparing the rest of dinner. Okay, so the next part of my dinner is I'm going to do a pork tenderloin. So you can actually still buy these, fairly inexpensively. I actually have been buying my meat from an online company that is all natural, grass-fed, no antibiotics or hormones added. And the price, like I said, I'm very price conscious. The price is probably less than half of what I would be paying for this in the store, or at least in the store that I go to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start removing these little bits of like silver skin that are on the outside of here, because I don't really want them. And if you just put the tip of your knife underneath it and get started, and then just get a hold of it and just pull on it, it comes right off. Okay. And then the next thing I'm going to do is open this up, because I'm going to end up putting this in between pieces of plastic wrap, kitchen wrap. I'm going to pound it out flat. And I went out to the garden and I pulled some rosemary out of the garden. I'm going to chop this rosemary up and put it inside here. And then, be careful you don't cut yourself when you're doing this. I had some basil that I bought at a retailer who shall remain nameless. And it was one of those living basil plants. And it looked beautiful in the store, and I brought it home, and I was real careful with it and watered it and thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'll have fresh basil every time I want it. And unfortunately, like a day later, it started to get like some kind of fungus or mold, like right at the top of the soil in the pot, and it started falling over. So it began to die. So I then took all the leaves off of it, put it in my food processor, olive oil, pine nuts, garlic, Parmesan cheese, zip, made myself my own pesto. So I have that in the refrigerator. And I'm also going to take some of that pesto and spoon it into here. And then I'm going to roll this up and use butcher twine to tie it with. And over here, I have some pieces of prosciutto that were left from a charcuterie board that I had. And I'm going to wrap this with the prosciutto before I tie it. And then I'm going to put sprigs of rosemary through the threads. So I'm going to start by pounding this out. So I'm going to get some plastic wrap, get it in between the plastic wrap, and get it ready to flatten it out. So I'm going to flatten it out to where it's probably going to be like maybe a half an inch in diameter. You don't want to pound it out too much, because if you do, then when you start to try to roll it, it's going to tear. But you do want it to be thin enough that it's going to make a nice shape or visual inside when you slice it. So I have the meat in between the two slices of plastic wrap. And then I have the meat mallet, and you'll see that on one side of it it's textured, on the other side it's smooth. So this textured side sort of helps tenderize. And then the smooth side I'm going to use to flatten this out the spreader a bit. Like I said, I don't want to make it too thin. I want it to be thin. I want it to be consistent, a consistent thickness, but I don't want it to be so thin that when I start to roll it, that it's going to tear on me. That looks about right. So I'm taking that top layer off, and then I'm going to leave this bottom piece on for now. And I'm going to cut up or chop up my rosemary, put it inside. Grab my homemade pesto from the refrigerator, spread that inside here. I'm going to season with a little salt and pepper. Give it a little salt and pepper now. And again, not too much. You want a little on the inside, but you're going to also be doing it on the outside, so you don't want to get too heavy-handed with it, because then it's going to be salty. And you want to ruin your meal by making it taste like salt and nothing else. All right. So I'm going to start getting this seasoned up and rolled up, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so I've got it rolled up, and I'm going to leave the seam side on the top for now. And the reason I'm going to do that is because as it cooks, the filling that I put in there, the homemade pesto and the rosemary, it's going to sort of bubble up a little bit, liquefy a bit. And if I turn this seam side down, it's going to all run out. And I really want to try to keep it in the meat as much as possible. So that's why I am doing it with the seam side up. Okay, so now I'm going to start taking those pieces of prosciutto, and I'm just going to be laying them across the top of here, trying to cover the entire surface of it with the prosciutto, at least the entire top surface. And I find that you buy prosciutto, and it's usually comes in these packages, and it normally has either some kind of paper or plastic in between the slices, and it seems as though it's almost impossible to get it off of there without shredding it up. So I find that the best way to have success with that is to take it out and let it sit until it gets to be like room temperature, and then it peels off of those sheets of either plastic or paper much easier, and you end up having some nice slices of prosciutto instead of having a shredded mass of prosciutto. This one I had left, I didn't use it. I probably left it a little too long in the refrigerator, and so it began to sort of dry out a little bit, which actually I like it when it's a little bit dry. It kind of tastes better to me. But it then does become difficult to get the sheets off without destroying them. Okay, so I have my butcher's twine here. And what I like to do is have at least 5 times the length of the piece of meat in the butcher's twine. And I start by sliding it underneath. And then on the first one, I'm just going to tie a knot in it. Now, don't tie it too tight. The reason that you're doing this is that you want this meat to hold its form. You don't want it to collapse in the oven, but at the same time, you don't want to tie it so tight that you're cutting into it. and basically destroying it. So now I'm going to go to the other end and I'm going to slide this underneath it. I'm going to pull it up with my finger here. This is the bit of the tricky part because the string can be quite long. And then I'm going to loop it through about every inch or so apart and tighten it. And like I said, you don't want to tighten it too much because if you do, you'll cut into the meat and it's just not a good idea. It doesn't look good that way. It doesn't cook well that way. But, again, keep doing that. Bring it underneath again. You can also use bacon to do this instead of the prosciutto. And I often use bacon because tenderloins they're a very lean cut of meat. They can be very dry especially if you even slightly overcook it. So if you wrap it with bacon before cooking it, you then have that additional fat that sort of gets infused into the meat and flavor. Who doesn't like bacon? I mean, really, come on. You keep doing this until they get all the way to the end. And I said, pull it, but don't pull it too tight. About an inch apart, an inch and a half at the most. And then I'm going to do one more here. And then I'm going to turn them over. I'm going to check to make sure I have these straight. Pull that tail out. Straighten these up a bit. And then I'm going to start from this end. And I'm going to tuck this string under. Take it around. I'm going to make sure this is on the end, that it's going to hold it in place. I'm going to take it once and then twice. Give it a little pull to tighten it. Go through each one of these the same way, once and then twice. Little tuck, tightening it once, twice, once, twice, and I'm just going to continue along like this. And by the way, I don't eat like this every day. This is going to be my Sunday dinner. I happen to be home today, which doesn't happen very often these days. I actually, for those of you that know me, I was an executive chef at a hotel for many years, and I retired like last June. And then I was home for 5 months and decided that I was a little bit bored. And then I thought, you have retirement savings and you think that it's a lot until you start going through it. And I started thinking, it's like I'm blowing through this money like really fast. It's like, maybe I should find a little job somewhere. So now I'm turning it back over. And I'm going to come back this way and loop this through this first one where we started, where we tied the knot. And again, I'm pulling it up over the end to sort of hold it in place. I'm going to do 1 and 2 like I did on the back side. And then I'm going to take these two strings, the two ends of the strings, and tie a knot in it. And then cut off the excess. If I can find what I did with my scissors. Let's use this knife. Oh, that was not a good idea. I just cut the wrong piece. Okay. I wasn't very smart. Now I need to try to fix it. Just push this through here, try to loop it through, and tie a little knot in it on the underneath side, just to make sure that it holds that in together. All right, there you go. Fixed it. You know, whenever I'm cooking, I often do things that I didn't necessarily mean to do, like that. But you can always fix it. If something goes wrong, there's always a way to fix it. So never panic. So I'm going to take these rosemary sprigs that are still on the stick, and I'm going to weave them through this thread on top of the prosciutto. So I'm going to stick right here, and I'm using it. Say rosemary kind of looks like a Christmassy tree. So you want to, when you're threading this, go from what would be the trunk of the tree, so that you're not getting resistance from the branches or the leaves. They slide through better. And I'll just put this one in. All right, so there you go. It's all ready to go. And I'm going to get him in a pan. I'm going to put a little bit of vegetable or something underneath it to just kind of hold it up off the bottom of the pan, and I'm going to drizzle it with olive oil and put another seasoning of pepper on it. And then again, I'm going to let this sit until it's time to start. And the thing that's really nice about this is that I can actually do the zucchini casserole that we started on earlier and this at the same time. This is probably only going to take maybe a half an hour or so to cook. So I'll let the zucchini cook for like the first hour, and then when I take the cover off of the zucchini, to let it cook for that last 30 minutes so that it begins to brown on the top. Then I'll put this in the oven, and they should both be done at the same time. So I'm going to get this stuff all set up in the fridge until it's time to start cooking, and then I'll take some nice presentation pictures at the end. So thank you for stopping by today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and do visit my blog, which is www.bonchivo.online, for other recipes and information about Italian cuisine. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend.